Sports Podcast.
And McAllister down the left field line. Connor Tate is going to round third. He will score. And rounding third is Blaylock. He will score. And the Dogs walk it off.
If you're looking for the latest Georgia Bulldog news in football, basketball, baseball, and recruiting, then you are in the right place.
It's third down. Bryce Young's career. You need 10. Play clock at 4. From the pocket. Launching downfield. Underthrown and intercepted. Keely Ringo has an escort down the sidelines. All the way to the end zone. And Georgia is going to conquer the Crimson Tide.
Hosted by Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan Williams.
Georgia on the mountaintop. Demons be gone, and the drought is over. National champions at long last.
Just sit back, relax, and prepare yourself for these hot takes you're about to listen to.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Classic City Sports Podcast. As always, Jeremiah Stoddard and Jonathan Williams. Another action-packed episode for you guys this week as well. G-Day wrapped up, transfer portals open, some recruiting buzz going on, and some other little things that we can throw in as well. Jonathan, how are we feeling?
Well, I'm excited that we actually have a football game to talk about. I know it's a scrimmage, so it's not exactly like the real thing, but the fact that we have some game tape, if you will, to go off of and actually put some film to these takes that we've been rambling about for the past couple of months. And we're no longer just having to talk about like, oh, what we've been hearing about this spring, kind of the rumblings that are going on, us predicting how we think players are going to look when the season rolls around. We now actually got a look at most of those players on Saturday. We got a look at all of the quarterbacks, or at least a good look at both Brock and Carson Beck. I hate to say, but we really didn't get a great look at Gunnar Stockton just because he's with the third team. So it's not exactly the best circumstance to kind of base some takes around him and base where he's at in his development. But we got a good look at everybody. There were some surprises, obviously, as there usually is in some spring games. And so I'm ready to get after it. I'm ready to kind of talk about what you and I saw, what we saw on the field, kind of how players are looking, maybe some surprises from the freshman class. Those were always great to see and great to talk about, just how early they look into their career. And because, I mean, those guys have only been on campus for like maybe 5 months at this point now. So they really haven't had a huge taste of college football yet. But nonetheless, they still looked really good. And they looked really good against the national champions. That's the big thing about Georgia. That's the great thing about Georgia, is that this is a good measuring stick for players to kind of base a player eval off of, because they're going up against some of the best talent in the country at every position. So ready to get after it, ready to discuss.
Yeah, absolutely. It was really fun to get back out there. You and I went to the game, and it was it's always a fun environment out there. And it was, I'll tell you all this, it's a spring game, but man, it felt like it was a game in August. I'll tell you that much out there. It was like sun beating down.
Hot.
So it was hot. Gave those guys a good idea of what it's going to be like to play in Athens in the heat and what it's going to look like. So that was probably good for those guys to get a little bit of a, hey, we're here in between the hedges like that. And I know they've been practicing and stuff, but that was probably one of the hotter days that we've had in a while, and so far this spring. So they got the full effect on that one as well. But let's stop or not talk about the quarterbacks just yet. Let's tease on that. We'll talk about the quarterbacks in a minute, because there's obviously a lot, as you can see in the comments or in the title of the video. We definitely have some stuff to talk about there. But let's go with the other thing you brought up. Freshmen that stood out to us, right? Freshmen that came on the scene and made plays immediately. First name that popped in my head and that I kept hearing on Saturday was A.J. Harris. I mean, there was not a play that would go by that, like, I felt like every couple plays you would hear something about him breaking up a pass or assisting on a tackle or something. Like, he was just everywhere on that field. I think he's going to be one of those freshmen that come onto the scene immediately, this fall, that, he's not going to be a starter, obviously, but we'll probably see him play some meaningful football in the fall. I think you would agree with that.
Yeah, I mean, I let out a tweet during the G-Day, and I was like, AJ Harris hasn't even, like I said at the start of the episode, AJ Harris hasn't even been at Georgia for like more than 4 months, and he's already making plays all over the field. There's like a span in the game where I swear it felt like 4 plays in a row. The commentator was AJ Harris in on the play, number 4 for Georgia. Like he was all over the field making plays. He did have that pass interference on the first drive. Kind of a tough play for him. The ball kind of looked like it was going to be a little uncatchable. Ended up tripping up with Jackson Meeks a little bit, got flagged for the PI. But, that's a true freshman in college football. That was his first taste of kind of a college environment on Sanford on Saturdays.
Yeah.
Like that was his first taste of it. And it is what it is. You're going to, like I said last episode, you're going to have those moments, those true freshman moments. That's okay. You're going to have those growing pains. But yeah, AJ Harris definitely won. Jonell Aguero was the one that I was really impressed with. That not only just because I thought he played really well in at safety for Georgia, just his body. He looks SEC ready already as a true freshman. He looks like he has a build, and it's probably why you've been hearing about him being a factor and as someone that is going to be playing meaningful snaps for Georgia's defense when the fall rolls around. He looked like he was ready to play. He looked comfortable out there. He didn't exactly look like a deer in the headlights. He looked like a guy that was ready to go today. If you needed him to go today, Jonell Aguero looked like a guy you could go ahead and plug in there and you would be confident about it. So Lawson Luckey, I think, was another guy that, everybody already knows about him. That's kind of an easy answer. He did really well at G-Day, had a few flash plays. I thought he looked really solid. Roderick Robinson, we got a good taste of him at running back just because, the running back room is pretty banged up with Milton out. Branson Robinson wasn't in the game either, so you got a really good look at Roderick Robinson, and I thought he looked pretty solid as well. That Georgia running back room is deep. You got a lot of bodies in there, and it's kind of amazing that they've still hung around to all these guys. Everybody wants to say, like, how are they keeping a hold of Carson Beck, Brock Vandegrift, and Gunnar Stockton? But, man, that running back room has a lot of names to it as well, and a lot of really good names, and they've managed to still, at this point, hold on to all of them. And so I'm not sure what that running back room is going to look like when it's fully healthy, and with Andrew Paul is inching back to being 100% when all those guys are healthy. That it's insanely deep. And even Cash Jones looked like a player that could end up playing a good bit for Georgia in the fall. He made some plays that look like that dude needs to be on the field. Like if Georgia's in a passing down, he very well might be someone that you see trotting out in the field and getting put in the personnel for Georgia. He made some big time plays, and he looked like a guy that deserved to have his name out there. And he made some plays that I walked away impressed with. So there's a lot of freshmen. And then, of course, I got to give a shout-out to him, but it's not just because I've kind of been riding his coattail the entire time, but Yazeed Haynes. We didn't see a lot of him. He didn't exactly make a lot of plays, but the only thing I'm going to comment on is he got one kick return in the game. He may have got multiple, but I remember just one. And as soon as he caught the ball and he started running, I was like, who the heck is that? And I was like, oh, it's freaking Yazeed Haynes. Dude had burning speed down the sideline. I was like, yep. That's exactly what we've been hearing about him, and that game speed definitely shows up on the college field as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And you kind of got into the running back room, so we'll talk about that real quick as well. Two things. First, if you went out there and watched on Saturday, that you would have saw the guys that ran out and like where we were, and you would say, hey, this running back room doesn't look so, deep right now. It doesn't seem like, we've got some walk-ons and stuff playing consistently right now. And we don't see any like scholarship. We had Broderick and we had I think Edwards played like a couple snaps, didn't he? Did he go out there? Like so like technically you got 2 scholarship running backs playing, but only one scholarship running back that was out there on Saturday. Otherwise you had Cash Jones, Savon Clark, who are good running backs. They just aren't who you look at Georgia and say, that's RBU, right? Like that's not what you necessarily get. But then you start listing all the other players that are on the roster that just couldn't play in G-Day or were held out for, various injury type reasons, whether or not it was like serious stuff or anything. It could just be, why push it? We know who they are. We don't need to get them out there and potentially re-injure something or re-aggravate something like that. Let's just give them the extra time, that kind of thing. One thing that we've talked about on this show multiple times is at the running back position, who is going to be the guy out of the backfield to catch and everything like that? And you just brought this up like a second ago, so I want to kind of dive into it. Cash is the guy that right now, he might be able to play some of that role for you. So he could go from somebody that you didn't really know, or he only got put in the past couple seasons in like garbage time type situations because of how many running backs they would rotate in before it got to him, to where now he could get meaningful snaps this year because his availability. right now, and showing that he can do something that we are worried about in this running back room. We've been talking about this a lot. Who's going to be able to do it? Guess what? Your best ability is your availability, and he's been available this spring, so he's had the opportunity to show them that he is capable of doing that out of the backfield. So it could be a huge moment for him based on this spring alone.
No, I think that's something to stand out is he led the red team in receptions and targets. He had 4 receptions on the day, and I believe it was the very first play of the game, or maybe not the very first play of the game, but maybe the first passing play of the game. Carson Beck immediately looked to Cash Jones, just checked it down to him, and they picked up the first down with him. So, and I think what has to do with that is, Cash Jones and Carson Beck have probably had some crossover throughout practice over both of their careers because Carson Beck, a lot of the time throughout his career, has been with the third team or the second team, and last year a lot. So he's probably had a good bit of crossover with Cash Jones. That's a guy that he's familiar with, a guy that he's practiced with a lot. So it also may just come down to that is someone who Carson Beck likes, is someone that he trusts. And so that may also give him a doorway onto the field. But yeah, nonetheless, he was given the opportunity to really pick up some reps this spring, and it looks like he's capitalized off them. But, also like we say, we see 10% maybe, that's probably even overdoing it, of practice reps on G-Day, or at least scrimmage reps that we see on G-Day. And so we got a small glimpse of what Cash Jones did on G-Day. That doesn't mean that that's what he's been doing at practice, but it still is a statement for him to go out there in the biggest moment of spring and perform really well and do a really solid job for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is the time of year that, we've talked about this several times as well. When people get injured, it gives you the chance, gives other guys the chance to get, snaps with the twos or snaps with the ones that they wouldn't normally get, or they wouldn't get very many of. So they get to kind of bump that up. And so I think Cash has been able to benefit by getting more snaps with, the twos and ones, even because of how many of those running backs are injured right now. And so it's kind of like a moment to shine for him, whether or not it turns out to be something crazy when all of those guys are healthy, because there are so many that have been, that didn't get to play right now that we are excited to see. Like Branson Robinson is going to be a stud. He's going to be a stud. We got to see him enough last year to know that. So he's another guy that's going to be up there with Edwards and Milton. And like you said a second ago, Andrew Paul, we haven't been able to see him yet. He's been hurt. So he was talked about before he went down. He was talked about as being like this really, really, really good prospect, and showing up well in practice when he first came onto the scene before he got injured. He was making noise, with the team as soon as he got there. So he does have a lot to overcome, but I do think there's a chance that he's earned himself some playing time. He was given the opportunity, at least, to prove something. Whether or not he was able to do it, like you said, over the whole course of spring ball and all the different scrimmages and practices, because we only saw such a small part of it. That part we won't know just yet, but we did get to see, something from him, and that was kind of fun for a guy that's been on the roster for a while and obviously doesn't get many moments to shine. He got the chance to play meaningful downs in Sanford Stadium on Saturday, so that was cool.
Yeah, and I think the guy that really stole the show for the entire day was definitely Mekhi Muse.
Yep.
And Georgia hasn't had a kickoff return for a touchdown in I don't know how long. It's been a minute. It
probably
seemed like
since Joystick.
Yeah, probably since Isaiah McKenzie. For sure. That's probably the last time that Georgia's
2016 or something like that.
Yeah, that was his last year, so it had to have been around that time. But if Mekhi Muse is the guy that's returning kickoffs for Georgia, or at least just punt returns, I think you're going to get one this season. I mean, he about did it twice in the scrimmage. He did it on the first chance he got, and he about did it twice. So he has the go-go juice for it. He's got the speed. He was really impressive. Even in the receiving game, he was really impressive. He finished the day with 4 receptions and 91 receiving yards and a touchdown and a 54-yard long reception. So he looked good. Now, again, this could be just one there's a pretty common occurrence in spring games where you have a guy that really shines, but that may not exactly be the case when the season rolls around.
Right.
Because Georgia has a lot of guys in that wide receiver room, a lot of guys that they trust, a lot of vets at this point. But if he's even just your guy, like I said, returning punts, I think Georgia would be satisfied with that. And I think that'd be a role that he would excel at for sure.
Yeah, I think he will definitely, because that's something we don't really have that return guy this year. You know what I mean? There's not a known return guy.
Yeah,
and he was out there immediately. But... Yeah, he's good, and Lad's good at it. But I don't know that he's like Isaiah McKenzie kind of thing. So it's not like you have somebody that's just a stud type returner. He's been good at it.
There's an art to it.
There is. It's not something that everybody can do. So Muse might be able to do that. And there was a reason that as soon as G-Day goes around, he's one of the guys taking those kick and punt returns like he was. So that means that he's getting looks at that, for the season. And from what we saw, he's got the explosiveness and the wiggle that you need. There's all kinds of different things. You got to have the good vision and stuff like that too. But I know it was on one catch. He did also lead the team in receiving, did he not?
Mm-hmm. He led the red team in receiving.
Yeah.
He had 91 receiving yards. The next highest guy was Lawson Lucky with 48.
Yeah. So how many total catches did he have? Because I know he had the big one.
He had 4 receptions.
Yeah. I mean, and one was a big one that he caught, made a few people miss, changed direction, and just took off. So it was, I mean, it's impressive to see him come out there and be able to do something. Like you said, it is G-Day, so maybe, we see some stuff that doesn't necessarily fully translate into fall and into game prep and stuff like that. So we'll see how it all goes. But nonetheless, he came onto the scene strong on Saturday. That part we know for sure.
No doubt. All right. We'll go ahead and get into the topic that everybody wants to listen to. Everybody wants to talk about it. I myself want to talk about it, the quarterbacks. We've been hearing that it is a battle. There is a battle going on this spring that Brock Vandagriff and Carson Beck are the guys that are kind of duking it out between one another. They're switching reps with the ones. Both the coaches, Mike Bobo, all of them are getting looks at both of these guys. But I have to say, after Saturday, I'm not sure that you can keep pushing, at least to the fans, at least to the outsiders. I don't know that you can keep pushing this belief that there is a quarterback battle going on. And I know that, like, we've been the ones that have been saying, like, oh, you have to take it with a grain of salt what you watch in G-Day, because that's not the whole case. It's not what maybe exactly everything that's been going on Saturday. But when you just not even taking away the throws that he made, or just taking away the big plays that Carson Beck or Brock Vandagriff made on Saturday, just watching Carson Beck facilitate and watching Carson Beck in the pocket, I think is what separates him. He is patient. He looks calm. He looks like how your quarterback should look in the pocket. When bullets are flying, when everything is going on, when the noise is going on in the stands, when everybody has their eyes on you, Carson Beck looked calm and collected in the pocket, and he was making checks at the line of scrimmage. He was commanding up there. He looked like the guy that everybody knows number 15 is who we are listening to, and that is a guy that we trust, and that is our guy right now. That is who we are listening to, and he looked like he was comfortable in that role. And just the way he progresses through the offense, he didn't look at any point, he'd never looked uncomfortable in any situation. He looked at his reads, and he was just checking them off. You could watch him, watch his eyes. And, I mean, even the play that I mentioned to Cash Jones, that's his 4th read. And so quickly, he just went boom, boom, boom. All right, Cash, I'm good with it. And, I think people might have been saying, like, man, Carson Beck is checking the ball down a lot. But that's just because Carson Beck is fine with that. Carson Beck is okay with taking the easy play. And he's like, all right, fine, we're good with that. We'll play for another down. And that's what you want in your quarterback. That's what you would want in your fourth-year quarterback, a guy that can do that in your offense. He understands every single thing. He understands what the offense is trying to do on every single play, and he knows where his guys are going to be. He's a timely player, and that's what makes him the best player in that quarterback room. And that's why I think after Saturday, Carson Beck is your quarterback one, without a doubt.
Yeah, I would agree that Saturday was something like you said, we have been talking about you can't necessarily take everything that you see at G-Day and go with it. But at the quarterback position, you can learn a lot. You really, really can learn a lot from what you see at G-Day. And I think, like you said, we did learn a lot about him. Yeah, he did check the ball down quite a few times. But at the end of the day, you're trying to get first downs, right? You don't need to break off 25 yards every time. If they're going to give you a 6-7 yard gain because you can check down to your running back, you're going to take that if you are a good quarterback, unless you see something very quickly somewhere else. And like you said, he went to multiple reads before he checked down on that play to Cash Jones. But I believe it was his first pass play of the game was a bomb to Arian Smith. I mean, he showed you that he can do that just as easy right now. So he showed you that he had the arm, the accuracy, an ability to stand in the pocket and deliver a strike down the field that you need to be able to see from your quarterback at a program like Georgia. So you need a combination, right? You need somebody that is smart enough to go through the reads and check down to the running back in those moments to get the yards that they're going to give you, because if they're going to give it to you, you're going to take it. And then you also need a quarterback that's got the arm talent and ability to throw it over top of the defense and not be scared to do it. And I don't think he's scared to do that at all. One thing that it's funny that people have, and it came up on Twitter today from at least one person I saw, so it's not necessarily swarming everywhere. I sent it to you earlier. It just, I don't know that somebody said there was concerns about him and his mobility. But I think the reason that anyone that says that right now, the only reason they have that concern is because they look at the guy behind him and say, Vandegrift is known for his mobility. That's the difference. Carson Beck is a mobile quarterback. Carson Beck is definitely a mobile quarterback. He's not necessarily a scrambling quarterback, but he is the definition of a mobile quarterback. He can break off and run for 30 yards if it comes down to it. He's just not looking for that. You know what I mean? I will say that when you saw Brock Vandegrift out there were multiple times where you saw him scramble. And he would do it kind of quickly. And so it looked like he almost looks for those opportunities because that's part of his physical game that he is very, very strong at. So just because they have different play styles doesn't mean that it's like a positive negative towards that player. I think it balances out. You can do both. And what we didn't really get to see from Brock was his crazy arm. You know what I mean? Like, he's got a strong arm, but I didn't get to see him air it out a lot that kind of way. He wasn't really looking deep down the field. We at least did get to see that one big play from Carson, which was nice because that's one thing that everyone wants to see at Georgia, right? Especially when you got a guy like Arian Smith lined up. If you don't throw it to him deep, you're probably not throwing it to him because that's what he runs at the University of Georgia thus far. We talked about him before too, thinking that if he could develop that route tree, he could be a very, very special player over the next season. So we'll see how that goes. But yes, Carson Beck, right now, in my opinion, is QB1. I think you and I have both been saying it the entire offseason that we think that he's going to be your starting quarterback. And I think that Saturday kind of solidified that for me. I don't think I'm going to change my mind on it. But Kirby Smart is definitely pushing the fact that this is a battle. And he said, why would I make a decision on who I'm going to go with after 25% of the practices, basically? Because there is so much more work to still be done throughout the summer and then through fall camp and stuff that's coming up. So he says there's still a battle. I think that there's a huge hill for Brock Vandegrift to climb in order to take it from Carson, at least for week one. Maybe something happens down the road and Vandegrift continues to do something throughout the season or something and makes it tough, but I think it's Carson.
Yeah, I think the best ball that Beck threw all day was the one that he threw to Bowers, kind of the lob pass down to the right sideline, and Bowers about took it for a touchdown.
Yeah.
And it's just, like, we know that Carson Beck has all of the arm talent in the world. He can make every throw that you want him to, but there's something about a quarterback that can put some touch on the ball and put it in the perfect place. And he put it right in Brock Bowers' breadbasket. I mean, it was in a perfect spot, right where it needed to be. Brock Bowers took it in stride. And if that's a duo that's going to be clicking this season, if that was just a small glimpse of what is in store for 15 and 19 this next season, then Georgia has everything in the world that they need. That's all that they need in that offense. If Brock Bowers and Carson Beck are clicking every single Saturday, you're going to be set as an offense. And I think it's just like Saturday for me, this is what I came away with. Carson Beck, by the end of the 2023 football season, is going to be the most NFL-ready quarterback in the SEC because he plays in a pro-style offense. That is what Georgia runs. And Kirby Smart himself said in an interview recently, he's like, we require a lot out of our quarterbacks. We require them to do a lot of things, probably more than most any other college program does. That's why we talk about progressing through your reads, checking at the line of scrimmage, reading the defense. You have to do all those things. Georgia doesn't do a whole lot of check with me in their offense. It's 15, you're out there. This is your offense. We're going to give you the play call, but you got to switch things up if you see something. You got to lead this offense into the right direction. It is on your shoulders to do that, and it is on your shoulders to make sure that the ball gets put in the right place. Go through your reads, 1, 2, 3, check it down if it's not there. Carson Beck does all of those things. He can make every single throw, and he looks like a guy that any NFL team would want. That's what you want in a quarterback at the professional level. If he's been doing that for an entire season at Georgia, if he's been progressing through his reads, if he is comfortable in a pro-style offense, if he knows how to read a defense and he knows how to command a room, that's all you need if you're an NFL evaluator. That's what you want if you're a GM out of your quarterback. And Georgia has an offense where those types of quarterbacks can thrive. And if you fully understand it, and if you get the hang of it, like Stetson Bennett did at the end of his career, then it produces really good results for you. And it's going to produce really good results for Carson Beck. So,
yeah.
It's like he may only get one season at Georgia, but it might be all that he needs to impress everybody in the NFL and say goodbye, Athens. I'm off to the league, and I'm going to go get my bag.
Well, I said this earlier to you and Harrison. Shouts to Harrison and Dan being in the comments after their show a few minutes ago as well. But I said this earlier. Actually, I might. So he will be, if he has the same stat line as Stetson Bennett had this season, right? So throws for 4,000 yards. Maybe he needs to add a couple more touchdown passes in there, something like that. He will be a first-round draft pick next year in 2024. If he has
if
the
Stetson
same stat
Bennett
line,
was 6'4", he'd be a first-round draft pick.
that's my point.
Bottom
That's my
line.
exact point right now. Because he's got the talent, he's got the mind, he's got the ability, but what he has that Stetson didn't have is the physical attributes that the NFL is looking for. Guys, if you've watched Will Levis play football, he's not a first-round quarterback. If you watched him play throughout the season, he is not a first-round quarterback. But guess what? He's talked about going in the top 5 picks. That's because he's got the physical side, and everybody says that he's got the upside, right? Like he's got the potential of something, and that's what the NFL cares about. Well, Carson Beck has that. So Carson Beck is a guy that if he can go out there in this Georgia offense and do exactly what Stetson Bennett did last year, he will be a first-round quarterback. I can guarantee that for you. He will probably be a top 5 pick because especially if Georgia goes on and potentially wins another championship or goes into a deep playoff run or something like that this year, he will be the quarterback that everybody's talking about. He will be a top 5 pick at that point. Not necessarily the number 1 quarterback off the board, but he would be up there. He would make the argument for it just by putting up the same stats that Stetson did last year.
Well, I mean, Carson Beck has all the talent in the world to be the best quarterback in the conference this next year. You think of all the names that are in the SEC, like Spencer Rattler. If he can do what he did in the last 3 games for South Carolina and do that for an entire season, he might end up being the number 1 guy in the SEC this next year. But that's a big if. We have not seen consistency from Spencer Rattler for his entire career, whether that was at Oklahoma or now at South Carolina. That's a big if. Alabama's still kind of figuring it out. Simpson maybe, or Milroe, maybe one of those two figure it out. They have the potential maybe to put their names up there. But you look around the league, there's not really these typical, like Joe Milton maybe for Tennessee because of the offense that he's in. He'll put up the stats. He'll put up the numbers to look like the best player in the SEC. But I think from top to bottom, from what's above the shoulders to his fundamentals, like Harrison's pointing out, to everything that is required of a quarterback, Carson Beck, without a doubt, has the ability to just be the guy in the SEC. And he might, I mean, it's no, at this point, it's not even a stretch to say that he could end up in New York like Stetson did last year, especially if he puts up the same numbers.
Yeah, if he puts the same numbers, he will be. Yeah, he'll be out there at least, a finalist.
So it's just, I know that's a lot of expectations to put on a guy, and I know we sound like the overreactors after a spring game to say all of this after just watching Carson Beck on Saturday throw 30 passes and to say all of this, but I just think that with how the offense looked, it's basically the same system. That's one thing we learned also on Saturday. It's basically the same stuff that Monken was running at Georgia. And that's what we've been saying on this channel. It's going to be essentially the same offense.
Threw the ball 69 times, ran the ball 34, I think. That's it.
And the sets are the same. It basically looked like if you did not know that Todd Monken was at Baltimore now, you would say that Todd Monken was still the offensive coordinator at Georgia. That's basically how similar it looked. And I just think with the weapons that Carson Beck is going to have this year, with having a third-year Brock Bowers and Oscar Delp and all of those wide receivers, we didn't even get to see Ra Thomas on Saturday. That's another name. I just think he's set up to have a historic season for Georgia. And I think that Georgia is in really good hands if Carson Beck is indeed your guy. And I think he is going to be your guy in 2023.
So, and I was reading Dan's comment right there about, I'll put it on the screen real quick. Here we go. He could easily be finally the Georgia quarterback to have success in the NFL first since Stafford. Yeah, I mean he's built like that. That's the point that I was making a minute ago. He is built like that. He is an NFL style quarterback by size, stature, and he has the arm. And like you kind of brought up this a second ago, the system that he's playing in is very, very difficult one for quarterbacks. It is a quarterback has to really, really know the game and understand so much stuff that's going on to be able to play even at a basic level in this offense. What helps him is he has been in the system with Todd Monken for 3 years. He's been here long enough to be here the entire time that Todd Monken was there. So he was learning that offense and that system the entire time. So he's ready for it. And yeah, he wasn't able to get on the field on Saturdays outside of garbage time, but he was able to absorb all of that and prepare week in and week out for that. Now he's going to get his chance. We'll get to see what he's doing. And by the way, like when we talk about this, we're talking about the potential that we see him being able to do based on if he were to be able to put up the same type of stats that Stetson is. We're not going on here and saying he's going to be a Heisman winner or anything like that right now. Obviously, that's an overreaction. We're just saying that based on his size and and physical measurables, all of that, if he does exactly what Stetson did last year, he will be in New York as a Heisman finalist, and he will be a first-round draft pick because the NFL will absolutely drool over a guy like him if he puts up the stats that he needs. And in this Georgia offense, with the weapons that he has around him, the weapons don't get better, man. This is the best weapons that any quarterback at Georgia has ever had. And I'm going back to the days where you had, even Pickens and even A.J. Green. And I'm not saying these guys are better than A.J. Green and Pickens. I'm saying the whole set of wide receivers, tight ends, running backs, everything combined is the most weapons any quarterback's ever had that I've watched Georgia football have.
Oh, no doubt. Absolutely. And speaking of, well, actually, we're 30 minutes in. We're going to take care of some business first. As Harrison said in the comments, if you're still here, if you're listening to us right now, hit that like button for us. It really helps us out. Hit that subscribe button also if you haven't already. We're really bad about this, and we need to be better about it. But reminding you guys to support us if you're here because it helps us out. And it does a lot for us, for you guys just hitting those 2 buttons, liking and subscribing. That does a lot for us. It helps us continue to grow as a channel. We've seen tremendous growth this offseason, and it's all because of you guys continuing to show up like you are right now in the comment section. That's greatly appreciated for us. So do all that for us, and it'll go a long way for us. And we really appreciate you, all of you guys, for being here. But there's another quarterback starter that we need to talk about. This is not a Georgia quarterback yet. I should say that. But it is one that is looking to be a Georgia quarterback with all of the recent news that is coming out. And it is a big one. We're talking about we just said that Carson Beck could very well be the first Georgia quarterback to have success in the NFL since Matthew Stafford when he got drafted in 2009. We're talking about another guy that has those traits, a guy that very well might be a number 1 overall draft pick when his college career is all said and done with. And I'm talking about none other than the number 1 overall player in the nation, the number 1 quarterback in the nation for the 2024 class, Dylan Raiola, the former Ohio State commit, decommitted in December. Recruitment opens back up. Now it seems like it was Nebraska's in the mix, USC's in the mix, and you have Georgia. For a while, it looked like maybe he was leaning towards Nebraska. They got some ties with there. Matt Rule's got something cooking over there. He's starting to reel in some good players, a few Georgia players that he got from the transfer portal. Lincoln Riley's Lincoln Riley. He's always going to be in the mix for these top-rated recruits, especially the quarterback position. But now Georgia, recently Dylan Raiola got crystal balled by multiple people to go to Georgia. And then along with that, there starts this the wide receiver Mingo, who is also a 5-star, gets a crystal ball to Georgia as well. And he was recently on Stafford's nephew. He is, if you did not know that. That's how full circle this is. Yes, Dan is correct. Great point, Dan. Thank you for bringing that up. But so now you get a 5-star wide receiver who was on the visit with Dylan Raiola at Nebraska. He also gets a crystal ball to Georgia. So a whole lot of recruiting buzz going around Georgia right now. And to put in perspective how big this would be for Georgia, Dylan Raiola would be the 2nd highest rated recruit that Georgia ever landed in program history. The number 1 being Justin Fields. We know how that one panned out.
I knew you were going to say it. Oh, he said it.
Yep.
He said it.
I know. Rubbing some salt in the wound that's been trying to heal for the past 4 years. But I think Georgia's okay with how things turned out. I think Georgia fans are very much okay with it.
I've been okay.
I think they're okay with that. So I don't even know if that's a wound anymore. I think that one's very much healed. But so yeah, this is a huge recruit. Again, number 1 overall player in the nation, number 1 quarterback in the nation, uberly talented. This is a dude at the quarterback position. You go and watch his high school tape. He can make any throw you want him to. He flashes almost every single play. And this is a type of guy that as soon as he walks in on campus, you know who he is. Everybody knows who Dylan Raiola is. If you're in that quarterback room with Dylan Raiola, you're probably a little scared all of a sudden that Dylan Raiola is now on the same depth chart as you. And you got to start performing a lot better because Dylan Raiola is one of those guys. He is a presence on the field every time he steps on the football field. And if Georgia does get him, like everybody is predicting right now, Georgia's going to overflow with momentum on the recruiting trail. Like I said, a 5-star wide receiver already also got his last name's Mingo. Can't remember the first name, but he's a 5-star wide receiver. He also got a crystal ball to Georgia, and he's only going to bring in more talent.
I think he got 2 crystal balls to Georgia, 2 different guys crystal balled him to Georgia afterwards.
Yeah.
And right now these are technically rumors, right? Like nothing's been official. Like he hasn't publicly committed, but there's rumors out there that he's a silent commit. And I at least believe the hype, because when you look around all of these other message boards, if y'all are on Twitter and you see that, I think there's accounts called Message Board Geniuses or Genius or something like that.
That's a fun account.
It's really, really fun. And they've been posting stuff from different message boards. One I saw earlier before we came on the show was from USC, Southern California.
The real USC.
The real USC. And it was like, well, he must be scared of competition, or maybe he isn't the sharpest tool in the shed because he could come play here and get coached by the guys we have and all that kind of stuff. And I was like, when you start seeing that from other fan bases, that means their insiders and stuff are telling them, hey, looks like he's going here, or he's not coming here at least. And so that's why, like, you got to put a little bit of like belief to the rumors that are going around, because it's circulating at multiple places, not just here. And but that comment alone was kind of funny. I made it. We can kind of use this as the talk-in season segment, because that's the talk-in season type content we would look for when we do that segment. And first of all, competition at USC. I mean, they have Caleb Williams, but he's going to be gone by the time Raiola gets there. So who's he going to be competing with going there? There's no competition if he goes to USC. He's going to start immediately. If he comes to Georgia, my hot take is he's not starting as a freshman. Like I don't think he is. That he could fight for it, but I think if he comes to Georgia, he's not starting his freshman year. He's going to have to fight for that position. He's going to have to compete. It's going to be not handed to him at Georgia, yet he might still want to come here. That means he's not scared of competition. Going to USC, to me, would scream more being scared of competition than coming to Georgia. Like, that made no sense to me.
USC is the Tennessee of the Pac-12, because Tennessee fans and USC fans both are holding on to the glory days that happened for USC. They ain't been relevant really since Reggie Bush. That's the last time that they were truly relevant. And for Tennessee, it was when Peyton Manning was on campus. And now all of a sudden they're kind of starting to get back into that relevancy, both Tennessee and USC, because they have Caleb Williams and Lincoln Riley, and Tennessee actually has a really good offense, and they're kind of starting to recruit a lot better. But these high school kids don't remember Tennessee or USC being good. They don't remember those glory days that you guys are clinging on to with every little bit of ounce that you have left of belief for those times. Like, nobody knows y'all like that. Nobody remembers you guys being good. You guys haven't – neither one of those programs have been good for the last 15, 20 years. So I think, if anything, Raiola wanting to come to Georgia has more to do with Georgia has proof of concept. Not only just the 2 national titles, but now they have proof of concept of what the offense looks like and what they want the offense to look like. That was kind of what the 2022 season was for Georgia. Was the tide shifted fully for the offense? They started creeping up a little bit in 2021. They almost averaged 40 points per game, but you really got to see the full development of it in 2022, which is why Stetson Bennett became your first ever 4,000-yard passer in a season. So now you see that. You see what Georgia is trying to do offensively. You see what it can do for your draft stock. You see what it can do as a player, and you know now, like, okay, I can go there and I can put up stats. Like, I'm not going to go there and just throw for 2,800 yards and I'm handing the ball off for the rest of them. I know that I'm going to be a focal point of that offense, and I'm going to be someone that they're going to work around me, and they're going to get me the freaking players, not only on offense, but on defense, to be a national title contender and be the best team in the nation and contend for national titles every single year that I am a starter. I think that's more so, if anything, why a player like Dylan Raiola would want to come to Georgia. One, you got currently probably the best coach in college football right now in Kirby Smart.
Yeah, like in the current state, yes.
In the current state, you have that. And then you have a veteran OC, Mike Bobo, who knows what he's doing. And like I said, you got all the other players. Georgia recruits at a high level at every single position, everywhere. So you're going to have dudes everywhere. And Raiola's going to pull his own players as well. Other guys in the recruiting, off the recruiting show, they're going to want to come to Georgia too, because they want to come play with Dylan Raiola. They want to come play with the number 1 player in the nation, because it's going to make them look better. So I think so. It's more so of, why wouldn't I want to go be a part of something that is already great and continue that legacy and build off of it and use it as a launch point for me to get to the NFL where I'm trying to get. That's the end result. Where I'm trying to get is the NFL. And Georgia probably is the best case scenario for you there. Now, don't get me wrong. Lincoln Riley develops quarterbacks like nobody's business, but that's about it. That's about all he's done in his career. He's made the playoffs a couple times, but it hasn't produced anything else. You might get a Heisman Trophy and you're going to go in the first round of the NFL, and that's what you want to do, then by all means. But if you want to do something in college football, Georgia's probably the best place for you.
It's the environment that you want to be in if you're a competitor, right? Like if you want to win, if you want to be on that type of team, this is the type of team that Bama has had for so long. That's why big recruits want to go to Bama, because they have a chance to do something special in college, not just win some football games, but to be like the best out there and be around all of those incredible players at every position, like you said, and be a part of something like that. That's what Georgia's becoming right now. And that's when you make the comment about Kirby Smart being the best current coach right now, we're not taking anything away from what Nick Saban has done. He's the greatest college football coach of all time, but that doesn't mean he's actively the best coach in 2023 as of right now. In his program, I think that Kirby Smart is that guy right now. But that's what you get with a player like this. If you're truly the best player in the country in your recruiting class, you want to go somewhere that you will be on one of the best teams, if not the best team in the country. That's where you want to go. And not taking anything away from what USC is probably going to do, because they do play in the Pac-12. They will probably be a playoff team they will definitely be a playoff team in the next couple of seasons, because it's going to expand to 12. They'll end up being in there because they're going to compete in the Pac-12. They're going to win the conference, and they're going to end up in the playoffs in the future setting. I think next year's the last regular 4-team playoff anyway, so it's about to change. You could go there and you could make the playoffs and stuff like that, but Lincoln Riley can't win those playoff games. We know that much. We've seen him get there. Like you said,
the Pac-12 championship game when he needs to.
No, I mean, you can't. He doesn't win those big games. That's what he showed you. He can win like regular season games. He can have you as a quarterback put up a lot of stats. But if you're trying to get over that and win some playoff games, that's not necessarily the place that I would go.
Yeah. But all in all, like we said, this is for the moment still just rumors. This is nothing concrete. We are not here telling you that Dylan Raiola is a silent commit to Georgia, or Dylan Raiola is 100% going to come to Georgia. But it is certainly looking like that is where this is heading. This is where this recruitment is heading. And it looks like a decision could be announced here very soon. So definitely worth talking about when the number one player in the country is potentially going to be coming to the University of Georgia, and you are a University of Georgia podcast. So definitely had to hit on that. Big news for Georgia, spring game, Dylan Raiola buzz, Carson Beck looking like the guy in that quarterback room. Everything's looking promising. Georgia today got announced, according to ESPN's FPI, as the favorite to win the SEC ahead of Alabama. It looks like Georgia's going to continue their run in 2023. The regular season looks like it's a cakewalk for them for the most part, if they can stay healthy and be the team that they are looking like as of today. But still, a lot of good offseason news to come for. Still looks like there's still going to be a quarterback battle going on. A lot of other position battles that are still going to be going on into the offseason. Cornerback, I didn't say quarterback, just want to clarify, cornerback on defense. Still looks like one that battle is going to be had until the season rolls around for sure. Got a bunch of dudes at safety. Defensive line is figuring things out. I think we saw some potential stars shine on the defensive line, and then the offensive line unit still looking good as always. So a lot of good positives from this weekend, a lot of good news this week for the University of Georgia. Starter, that is everything I have, unless you want to add on to anything.
No, I think we've kind of done enough for today, but I did mention something about the transfer portal stuff. Let's dive into that next week. Obviously, we know that Bear Alexander hit the portal. He's the biggest name so far to do it. I do think that we're going to have some other names over the next week or so that are going to be hitting that might stand out to people. So we'll kind of wait to cover that a little bit more in depth when there's some more information there. Harrison, no, I'm not on the USC hype train any more than I was last season. I said they would not make the playoffs last season. I didn't say that they wouldn't be able to make the playoffs in the next couple of seasons. I think that was a realistic expectation under Riley, is that in 2 to 3 years, he'd be able to compete for a playoff spot in the Pac-12. My big thing was he wasn't turning a 4-8 team into a playoff team year one. And guess what? He didn't. So it is what it is. But yeah, that's all I got.
All right. Well, guys, we appreciate all of you, each and every single one of you, for lighting up the comment section, for tuning in tonight, liking and subscribing and supporting us. We appreciate that. If you're still here now, if you're watching it back, you're watching us live and you're still here listening to us ramble on, we appreciate you. We appreciate the support. We love every single one of you for showing out every single week, and we will continue to bring you the off-season content every single week. Stoddard, you can do your role of the night every single night that you get to do that right now.
It's me. Okay. All right. As always, guys, keep it classy in the Classic City. We will catch you next week.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Classic City Sports. Take a second to subscribe, rate, review, and share with your friends and family. Feel free to reach out to the Classic City Sports crew on Twitter with any topics you'd like discussed. You can reach out to Jeremiah at The Stodfather, to Jonathan at Dr._J Will, and make sure to follow at Classic City Pod for show updates. Check back next week for a brand new episode. In the meantime,